Jacqueline was looking at the camera, the infrared camera, and the costumes kept coming up as white. And everyone's wearing black. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And the cinematographer actually was like, I don't freaking know either. So he ended up setting up a station outside of Jacqueline's shop where they could test all these costumes.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Costume Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I am the Lisan Al Gaib, Spencer Madi Williams. What's up, Elizabeth?
Oh, you know, Spencer. Just trying to survive out here.
It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a hot minute.
It has been a hot minute. You texted me about recording Dune the other day, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's something we have to do.
I was like, hello, do you remember me? We have a podcast, Miss Theater Costume Designer.
Hey, I've been going through it this past 2 weeks.
Let me just say on behalf of everyone listening to the podcast, we're all just super stoked for you doing all this costume design work. I'm thrilled, honestly. So
thank you.
If you got to take a day off or two, you do it because this is what you need to be doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
With that being said, how's it going?
It's going. It's going.
Yeah.
Would have gone better if I didn't get sick, but you know.
Yeah, I'm guessing you don't have like a substitute teacher type situation when you're a costume designer.
No. No, it's just me.
Yeah.
I've gotten a little bit of help. But yeah. Not enough.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you're killing it. You've been sick. I've been sick. This is the first time on a podcast where I'm not sick and Elizabeth's been under the weather.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like I'm sick every other episode, honestly.
Yeah. You're definitely someone who like you just log on sometimes and I'm like, oh, he's got a little something.
Yeah. I step outside and I get a fever and body aches, honestly. So and I'm happy to see that you're alive after the earthquake that ravaged your side of the country yesterday.
I know. Yeah, I was standing in my kitchen and I felt it like roll through our house. And we've had a lot of stormy weather, a lot of rain, a lot of coastal flood warnings, and a lot of wind. And fun fact about Pennsylvania, we get tornadoes. So my first thought was not like, oh, we had an earthquake. I was like, is there a tornado? Do I have to be worried? And I just waited for a second. I didn't hear a train. So I was like, I think we're good. And just went about my day. And then my mom was like, there was an earthquake. And I was like, that's what that was.
Yeah. I gotta be honest. I thought earthquakes can't happen on the East Coast. Am I wrong for thinking this? I don't. I didn't know this could happen.
They're very rare, but they do happen. I've only while I know I have been in earthquakes in California, the only earthquakes I've experienced have been over here.
Oh, that's so weird.
Yeah.
Well, I've been a California person my whole life. So, I mean, I sleep through earthquakes at this point.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a really crazy one. But yeah, that's weird. Well, glad to see that you're alive. And I hope the rebuilding process goes well.
I think I have confidence. I think we'll be okay.
Well, since the last time we talked, Daniel and Chloe were in town. That's one reason why we haven't talked in a little bit. So they were in town. We got to go to Disneyland because that's kind of like our thing. We had a good time. Took a little promenade through the Huntington Gardens, which was lovely. It was a quick trip, but I got to meet Daniel's family. They're also lovely. Really? Daniel's family is all super similar. They all look the same, kind of have like the same mannerisms. It's really funny. You gotta see it.
It's a family full of Daniels.
Yeah, it's like a Eddie Murphy situation where he plays like every single character at the dinner table.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah. But everyone's super nice. It's super funny. Daniel's family is super funny. And then last night I was at a Miss Lauryn Hill concert, so I can't really hear out of my right ear. So
yeah. You had floor seats. I was like, Spencer is having a great time.
Yo, I need to take care of myself when, not many of us were working last year, me being one of them. I worked on a podcast, but not so much in my everyday job. And I missed so many good concerts, Miss Lauryn Hill and the Fugees being one of them. And she's been like one of my bucket list concerts. And I just randomly saw the other day, it was like, oh, we're doing a show in Ontario, California, which is, not exactly where I go to concerts, but it's closer to my hometown in the high desert. And I was like, hell yeah. Made it out there, got myself a floor seat, a little drinky drink, and I just partied with this like senior citizen couple. It was like double dating next to me, and I made friends with them and partied my ass off with them to some Miss Lauryn Hill. It was a good time.
That's fun. Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It was good. I just miss going to concerts. I love live music.
I know. I wish I went to more concerts. I missed Hozier. He's like one of my bucket list concerts right now. His last
album was killer.
Yeah.
Anyways, so excited to be back. Before we get into our episode, Elizabeth, we got a Apple Podcast review that we get to read.
What? We got one? That's amazing.
It's like Christmas Eve over here. All right. K Power Gaming said, the Art of Costume podcast is fantastic. I just found it courtesy of a comment made on another podcast, and now I'm obsessed. I have so many episodes to binge, and I'm thrilled to do it. And they gave us 5 stars, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's so kind. I just happened to check the other day, and my heart skipped out of my chest. I was so excited. So,
oh my gosh, that's so nice.
So to everyone else, if you want to read your reviews, feel free to drop your own on Apple Podcasts, because it really does help us get noticed. Plus, it also just makes our hearts warm, because sometimes it feels like we're just talking to the void. So
then are me and Spencer just recording our conversation?
Yeah, for real. In space, no one can hear you scream.
Oh, well, thank you, K Power Gaming. Happy you're here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you have so many episodes to binge.
Yeah. Watch out.
I forgot to tell you, I met I've now in the past month, I've met 2 listeners of the podcast in person, in public. Of course, I've always been at the ASU FIDA Museum. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I've had 2 people be like, hey, I listened to your podcast. And I was like, what?
Aww.
And one person said, yeah, I started listening. And then I went back to the beginning, starting with the first episode. And I was like, woof.
Yeah. We're sorry about those early episodes.
Yeah. I cannot physically imagine myself listening to our 3-hour-long Cruella episode. That sounds rough.
We were trying to figure things out. It was
yeah. But if you're doing that, then thank you, I guess. Have a good time, but feel free to skip forward. You don't have to do that to yourself.
Yeah. The first season or 2, if you just want to listen to the ones that sound interesting, that's a great course of action.
Right. I don't think we got decent mics until the end of season 1, honestly. So
well, wait, when did Daniel give us our Christmas gifts of microphones? Was that the end of season 2?
End of season 1.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, we started season 2 with the good mics, I think.
Okay.
I'm so excited to get into this week's episode, because this is kind of a continuation of one of our previous episodes that was one of my favorites, actually. Elizabeth, what did we watch?
Same. I'm so excited, because we also have not gotten really to talk about this.
Yeah.
But this week, we watched Dune Part 2.
Yeah. Oh, man, was it good. It was so good.
I was so happy. Spoiler warning from here on out. Just
Yeah, let's get that out.
We're still going to do a summary, but I'm just about to talk about this. with the way they like condense the timeline, I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I was shocked because I was like, there's a lot in that book.
Yeah, because you're a book reader.
Yeah, there's a lot in the book. And it's like, it goes from like his entire family is murdered to like 3 years later, I think, or something. 3 to 5 years later. There's like a big time jump in the book. And there's just like a lot going on. There's a lot of characters and it's fantastic. Like if you love this movie, absolutely go read the book. You get so much more information. But the movie, the way they condensed that timeline, the way they curtailed it for film was brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah. I last time we watched Dune for the podcast, which was in 2021, I believe. I think it's in our first season, actually. Was it?
Was that the end of our first season or second season? That was like an end of something.
I think it was the end of our first, because we did Fifth Element like right before or after. Regardless, I I fell hard into the Dune space, and I started reading the book. Was loving the book, but then I decided to like stop myself because I had already like seen the first movie, and I was like, I'm just gonna finish with the second movie and then go to the book. I didn't want to go movie book, you know. So now that I've done both movies, now I will go back to the book.
Okay.
And I have plenty of time before Messiah, which actually just got greenlit in the past 2 days.
Yeah, I have to. I'm like, oh gosh, now I gotta read Messiah now. I haven't done that.
That's a great episode, though, if anyone wants to go back to it, because Elizabeth kills it with the behind the costume facts. Like, she goes in. It's a pretty nice deep dive into Frank Herbert and everything. But with that, let's get into Dune Part 2. Elizabeth, do you want to give us a summary?
Yeah, since you made these lovely notes, I absolutely will. Dune Part 2 explores the mythic journey of Paul Atreides as he unites with Chani and the Fremen while on a path of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the unknown universe, he endeavors to prevent a terrible future only he can see.
So sinister. And that is Dune Part 2. I'm excited. I've as you all remember, I'm not in school anymore, so I feel like this is me getting back into school and doing this presentation we're about to talk about. Diving behind the costumes, we have the brilliant director Denis Villeneuve and costume designer, our friend Jacqueline West, who we all met on the podcast just last year for Killers of the Flower Moon. You know Jacqueline for her work on Quills, for which she was nominated for an Oscar. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I did not know she did that movie, but that is a banger movie. I think you and I have talked about this.
I think we have. I need to rewatch that. I was actually thinking about it recently, and I was like, because I saw that as a kid and was like, wow, that's cool. And I'm like, I need to go back and watch that.
It still hits. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, for which Jacqueline got another Oscar nomination. The Social Network, Argo. The Revenant, for which she got another Oscar nomination. Killers of the Flower Moon, for which she was just nominated for an Oscar nomination, which we did a episode on just last year with Osage costume consultant Julie O'Keefe. And of course, Jacqueline did the costumes for Dune Part 1 with Bob Morgan, for which she was also nominated for an Oscar nomination and won a Costume Designers Guild Award.
Yes.
So lots of Oscar nominations, and I think we could count on a sixth one coming up in the next year or so.
Yeah. I'm like, hopefully an Oscar win. Like,
I wasn't going to say it yet, but I am definitely working on that. And I will also say that this is our first solo episode in a while. Elizabeth and I have had a lot of guests.
Yeah.
We did reach out to Jacqueline, and it's not of if, but when, essentially, when we're going to have her on for Dune. So I think we're just kind of waiting until the award season kind of kicks off again, which I'm both excited and nervous about. I'm like, award season.
I know. It's going to be a tough one.
With that, let's dive behind the costumes. As we've been talking about. Dune Part 2 is a continuation of the story we talked about in 2021. But if you've seen the film, then you know that there's a lot more to this part of the story. Elizabeth definitely knows from reading the book. And Jacqueline West certainly felt that sentiment and told Vogue, all of the worlds are much expanded in Dune 2. We had our hands full, which I was excited to see because that was my first thought too. If it's just part 2, are the costumes going to change that much? What are they going to add to make it feel different? And I think it's safe to say that they definitely added quite a bit to this one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. It was so cool, especially because there was a lot of the same. But the new characters that were introduced, I guess there was at least one new world introduced. Like, they really, they were like, here's our opportunity, and they took it, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and even like the difference between the northern Fremen and the southern Fremen, there's like a big difference there. We knew there was gonna be still suits, but yeah, she really expanded on it. With that, we know Jacqueline is very much a trained art historian and just all around researcher. Basically, you could tell when we were talking about Killers of the Flower Moon. In that same interview with Vogue, Jacqueline cited the Dune author himself when discussing her approach to costuming such a broad universe, saying, Frank Herbert always said to understand the future, you have to look at the past. And I think Dune is a world starting over after some kind of apocalypse, which I think is just such a fantastic quote because it really explains the entire approach.
Yeah, especially... I don't know. How much do I bring up? Because you know, like, what the apocalyptic event in the books was?
Not really.
Oh. So it was, I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently.
I'm guessing war, bombs, explosions, plague, hunger.
It was like a war between AI and humans.
Right.
Yeah, that's why there's no outright computers.
We did talk about this in our first episode. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should have re-listened to ourselves before this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'm just a nerd, and I don't know why I know this off the top of my head, but I can't remember what I ate yesterday.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to be nerdy about. That being said, throughout this episode, we're going to get some insights on the many inspirations that built this world. To me, Dune is not just about one culture or reference, but an amalgamation of many inspirations of, humanity deconstructed and reassembled thousands of years in the future, which is really exciting. Doing my research for this episode, I noted some reoccurring themes in Jacqueline's inspirations that Vogue also pointed out, and I think it's really funny when we put them together, such as Jacqueline was very much inspired by BDSM, tarot cards, and nuns, which to me is just the recipe for success in any venture in life. To elaborate, in a conversation with Vogue, Jacqueline pointed out that she was particularly inspired by the tarot, a love for which she credits to her Berkeley roots, especially the Queen of Swords card. When costuming the Bene Gesserits, she is quoted as saying, I noticed that when I was using the tarot cards, there's a certain shape that evokes a holiness all through. And she continued to point out the piousness similar to medieval paintings by Giotto de Bondone and the Virgin Mary, all of which are linked by their head coverings. I have some pictures for Elizabeth of like the Bene Gesserit, and you could definitely kind of see that medieval influence.
Yeah, I definitely see it, especially with the Madonna and Child. That's like a very, like you can see that like very strongly.
Right. Going further, Jacqueline attended Catholic school as a child and was captivated by the nuns and their habits. She told Vogue, I remember seeing the nuns all walk down a corridor together and their habits flying as they catched a breezeway outside. I love that image, and I try to recreate that through Dune 2 with silhouettes. And it brought me right back to the first film when we see the Bene Gesserit coming out of their ship or whatever, and the wind is blowing their big old headpieces back.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite images. So
yeah, I love that because she definitely brings that out in the Bene Gesserits.
Making nunwear cool, honestly. Another big theme is looking to the past. which Jacqueline was constantly finding inspiration in the 1920s. Tiffany jewelry, Balenciaga was mentioned multiple times, and haute couture renaissance of the 1950s. But above all, Jacqueline went back to medieval research and references for Dune. In an interview with GQ, Jacqueline called the costumes of Dune modieval, as in medieval, but with a modern bent. She is quoted saying, "Denis always described Arrakis as the beginning of a new world, a world starting over. That's why I went back to a lot of medieval references to give that feeling of age old, but now."
Okay, this has to be the next wave in fashion, modieval.
Please,
let's
and
do
thank
it.
you.
As a society, let's get rid of fast fashion and let's just all go in on modieval.
Yeah.
Let's just do this.
We've been saying this for a long time. I feel like I want to bring back chainmail and tunics and veils and all that good stuff. I'm tired of, I mean, I like my Dune t-shirt I'm wearing, but I want to get back into modieval, please.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it.
With that, Elizabeth, it's time to take a break. Are you ready?
I'm so ready, Spencer.
May thy knife chip and shatter, Elizabeth.
Sounds
Say
good.
it back. All right, fine.
Spencer, are you ready to get to Arrakis?
I am so excited to go back to Arrakis, and I want to start actually with like that first opening scene because I was immediately ready to go in this movie when we see the Harkonnen soldiers searching for the Fremen somewhere in the Arrakis dunes with the orange hue, and we see their creepy armored uniforms. So scary.
Yeah, so scary, but so cool, especially like when they start like floating around.
Right. I was like, what?
Because it's like, it makes them like in the first movie where they referenced insects a lot. It definitely does that. They look like hard little like exoskeletons, but they're so cool. And they look so stark against all the orange. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And also, I want to talk about this scene in particular, too, because I haven't seen anyone ask Jacqueline about it. But the costumes very much have like technology involved in them.
Yeah.
And you get like one shot of the back of one of the Harkonnen uniforms, and you could see like the little gears and fans like moving in the back of it in this scene, which I thought was so cool.
It is.
I would love to ask about that, honestly, when we do talk to her. It's really cool looking. But we have some new characters to talk about, Elizabeth, and one of them is, of course, is her name Princess Irulan? How would you pronounce it, book reader?
Trying to remember.
Well, we could just say Florence Pugh's character. I was so stoked to see Florence Pugh in this movie. She absolutely kills it. And all of her costumes, one after the other, are just bangers.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite is definitely her all white look with like the gold little like knit skull cap. Just because I'm like, you're the princess of a galactic empire, but you are just like chilling in your like coastal grandma, like where just like recording your little diaries and being like, I wonder what's happening.
I love that. But also, this is very much like you costume too. You could easily pull off this costume, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
It's easy. But this is one of Jacqueline West's favorite characters to costume, which honestly should not be a big surprise to any of us. I mean, it's Florence Pugh.
Yeah.
So Jacqueline told GQ she wanted Irulan to look constrained but glamorous. In another scene, she wears a habit type garment that encircles her entire face. And she said her face almost looks imprisoned, so evokes the emotion that she's already trapped in the Bene Gesserit's plan with a plan world. Which is, I didn't even think of that because she is a Bene Gesserit, but in all of her costumes where she's not in her coastal grandmother look, she has like the bars and the chains on her. Like she is really being pulled down by those lovely old Bene Gesserits who have all sorts of ideas and plans.
Oh, yeah. They're not trying to control anything at all.
Right. Jacqueline also told GQ that the one look that we see at the end, that chained look, which I've gotten only 1,000 messages about, she called that her warrior princess attire, and it was heavy for Florence, but the idea was that the costume would look almost liquid on her body, and it's her ultimate idea of what she considers modieval. So this is the mood board, Elizabeth. This is what we're looking for.
I can work with this. I can work with this.
Yeah. I expect to see this on both of us in our next podcast recording.
Yeah, I'll just whip that up real quick.
Right. But it really is true. Like, it is very fashion forward, yet still references back to medieval times with the use of the chainmail and the metal pieces and the sharpness of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially like even in her like coastal grandmother look, like the skull cap, just like that is so medieval.
Yeah. It's really cool. I'm wondering how many people are dying at coastal grandmother. Because that wasn't my first word. But
like literally what I thought that. I was like, ooh, look at her. She's ready to sit on the beach.
It also is like her like being alone and away from the Bene Gesserit. So this is maybe what she wants to wear when she's being leisurely and away from, you know, the nice Reverend Mother who seems to always be cranky, honestly.
Yeah.
Another character that we're introduced is the Emperor, played by Christopher Walken. And I did not know what to expect with the Emperor, but I really loved it, actually. I think Christopher Walken did a good job. Because I was afraid he was going to be too much of Christopher Walken, but it worked. It worked, honestly.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And I was interested to see what they were going to do, because the idea like behind like how he wrote the book is like the princess is actually like recording a history of what happened, except for the very end. You don't really get, you know, any of her character or the emperor's character, except for just like some mentions here and there. So I was interested to see how they were going to like incorporate them. And it was great. It was subtle and it was great.
It was subtle, which I actually think kind of works to his costume too, because when I think Emperor, I think of something that's big and flashy. And this Emperor was not that at all. He was really, I mean, sure, he was kind of cruel and tough with the way he ruled, but his actual costume was actually quite subtle and almost had like a vulnerability and a weakness to it, which I feel like Paul Atreides takes advantage of in the end, where he's very stoic and the Emperor's like wearing his comfy robes, you know?
Yeah. Which I kind of feel like it worked though.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Especially because it was like he's so comfortable in his role as emperor that like the smallest little hint that something will take that away from him makes him murder an entire family. Like, because it's like, dude, Paul's dad was never going to try and take the universe from you.
Oscar Isaac's character was just trying to vibe.
He really was. He just wanted to vibe. You should have left him on his ocean planet.
Yeah,
none of this would have happened.
Maybe collect some spicy spice every once in a while, but nothing freaky. You know?
He was not the person you had to worry about, sir.
Yeah. Messed up. What a naughty boy Emperor Shaddam 4 is. Or is that 6? I don't know.
I think that's 6. That's a Roman numeral.
Yeah. Whatever. This isn't a math podcast. Anyways. I now wanted to go back to Arrakis, because we were talking a little bit about how, you know, we knew that there's going to be still suits, but I felt like the scale of how we got to know Arrakis in this one was so much bigger, from the worm riding to going from the north to the south. It was a lot of costumes, Elizabeth.
I was shocked by the number of extras, especially because we're in a lot of like enclosed spaces. Because like the Fremen live underground, like they're not just like chilling out on the dunes most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's these like huge city scenes.
Right. Which is a lot of work. Speaking of, Jacqueline told GQ that she estimates she made about 4,000 costumes for the huge crowd scenes set in the realm of the Southern Fremen. She said, we had an enormous workshop with 80 people sewing, and she compared it to an airplane hangar. So quite the space. And with that, there were so many costumes, so she needed lots of help, of course. And Jacqueline is all about like finding people in the local area that like know the craft and know the history. And they were in Budapest. So she hired locals and jewelry makers in the Middle East to tell a visual story through costume, particularly with the female characters in the film, i.e. the Bene Gesserit. So lots of different perspectives going into these costumes. She also talked a lot about the references that went particularly into some of the Fremen costumes and Lady Jessica, who very much becomes a part of that culture. Jacqueline said she imagined all desert cultures combined in the future is what made up the Fremen. The Fremen jewelry that Lady Jessica and other Reverend Mothers wear is reconstructed from pieces West had shoppers and friends acquire from places ranging from Istanbul, North Africa, Russia, and Japan. So this was a very global production, which I just think is absolutely fantastic because you could really see.
I love that, especially because like Dune is such a like what happens to all of our cultures in the future? How do they meld? How do they evolve into the universe?
Right. Yeah. It's not just a local operation.
No. That's great. I especially love so my favorite character in this movie was Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
Okay, he was fantastic. He was funny and scary and like just like wild. And he always looked so good. He was definitely one of those people who's like, I have to like represent myself and my culture in the best way possible. So I have to look good at all times. That's like the vibe I got from him.
His character was hilarious, but also wasn't like too over the top or it wasn't believable either. Yeah. So funny. Javier Bardem recently did an interview where he said something to the extent of like, you know, I think he has like a son and a daughter, and he was like, oh, I did The Little Mermaid recently for my daughter because she loves The Little Mermaid, and I did Dune for my son because he loves Dune. And I'm like, sir, shut up. Like, you had such a good time. Don't try and tell me you did not love this movie that you were in.
That is
trying
so
to be
cute,
so humble about it. Yeah.
Aw, I love that.
Yeah, it was such a good role. I loved it. And you're right. Like, every time you saw his armor, especially, you could tell like this dude will mess you up. If he might seem like a funny guy who's just like really in love with his religion and beliefs, but he'll mess you up if he has to.
There was a couple times I was like, ooh, watch out, Paul. You might not make it past this lesson with Stilgar.
Yeah. Another character that we need to talk about, who we really didn't talk about in our first episode about
she was hardly
Dune,
in the movie.
right, was Chani, played by Zendaya, of course.
Yes.
She killed it, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Zendaya, and she was amazing in this.
She really was. And she just really embodied like the Fremen look and culture and just like exuded that at all times.
Yeah. Did she do what she needed to do for you in terms of the book too?
So I would say her character was changed the most.
Right.
She's a very passive character in the book. Very passive character in the book. And like she's there to like stand by her man and like do what needs to get done, but she's not really challenging Paul in the way that she is in the movie. And I think that was a great change from book to movie.
Yeah, well, I felt like Zendaya brought like a realness and an authenticity to it. I mean, honestly, Paul does some questionable things in this film, and I just feel I would like to believe that most people like Zendaya's character would be like,
yeah. If anybody was, because I've heard some people are not coming out on the right side with Paul. He is not the good guy in this. Just like a general PSA, he's not the good guy in the book. He's not the good guy in this. Just so everybody knows, like Zendaya is right to question everything he is doing.
I'm very much still on Paul's side right now, but I realize that it's going to be a controversial choice at some point.
Well, I'm like Paul's not in the right, but also like no one else is either. So why not be on Paul's side? But like he's not a good person.
Yeah, everyone's wrong. Jacqueline, in an interview with Variety, talked about Zendaya's character. She said, I needed to keep her quite tough, but I needed her to also be soft and romantic for Timothy and for their love affair to evolve. With the unisex still suits looking identical, Jacqueline looked for ways to expand Chaney's outfits with raw silks and linens that would lend themselves to her sexuality. Jacqueline went on to say, I want to give her a real femininity, and her body is so beautiful. I could put her in a caftan and it would still show through. So, but I think it's such a good point. I really didn't think about that because all the still suits looked the same, but they still felt unique. And with Chaney, at least, she had like the scarf, the linen piece over her, which did bring like a feminine flair to it.
Yeah, I love that. That's also something that like is kind of in the book where like they all look the same, but they put their own like personal flares on the suits. So I love that she did that.
I want to decorate a still suit, but
let's do it.
What I loved about our Barbie episode, you gave a brilliant shout out to the styling of Margot Robbie on her press tour. I had to just take a moment and just shout out Zendaya's press tour for Dune. It was incredible. I mean, every look. I know she works with La Roche quite a bit, her stylist, and I'm not sure if he's responsible for all these looks, but I know some of them, and all of these looks hit. They are so good. I in particular love her London tour. She just look after look, the archival Mugler.
It was so beautiful. The like metallic like suit that when I saw that, I was like, girl, get it. Like this is incredible.
Yeah.
You're doing the most. I love it. And then Paris, I really loved both of her Paris looks. More
the Laia. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That was my favorite of the two, but I did love that like that 2-piece custom Louis Vuitton. Like can I have that for my wardrobe? Like this is where we need to be going as a society. That and her custom Bogueta Venta in Mexico City. Like these two looks, like everyone in the world just needs to take those two looks, the idea of modieval, and we just need to go into the future. Right. We just need to get to it. All on the same page. If it were up to me and Elizabeth, this is what everyone would be wearing from this point forward. In a very Paul Atreides way, we are telling you exactly what to do going forward. Like, use the voice. Speaking of using the voice, Lady Jessica really had quite the evolution in this film. Dude. Elizabeth. Go from my favorite character, Stilgar, to my least favorite character. I mean, kudos to Rebecca Ferguson. She did in the movies the same thing that happened in the book, where like in the book, I loved Lady Jessica for the first half. And then the second half, I was like, oh my gosh, girl, like Stop.
Yes.
And loved her in the first movie. The second movie, I'm like, you gotta stop. This needs to end.
Lady Jessica is up to some scheming and some shenanigans, some tomfoolery in this film. I loved it though. I think Rebecca Ferguson is incredible, and she did a fantastic job. And I don't know. I mean, I guess Oscar nomination would be kind of crazy, but I'm just saying it should be considered.
I think so. I think that's a fair shout out. Yeah.
Yeah. And in an interview with our good friend Jazz 10K from Variety, Jacqueline West talked about furthering Lady Jessica's costume arc as she travels from that lush planet we loved of Caladan to Arrakis. And we remember in the first one, we see almost an instant transformation in terms of colors and textiles. Jacqueline was inspired by fabrics worn by the Tuareg culture in Morocco, quoted as saying, "Looked at how they used layers of linen and gauze and light colors to repel the sun." With Lady Jessica pregnant, Jacqueline West also expanded the way her outfits fitted as her belly grew. So that was something she also had to keep in mind. She went on and saying, "I started to make the fabrics lighter and not so luxe, but I kept that medieval feeling throughout the movie for her. Her wardrobe becomes more desert friendly, and I incorporate a lot of Fremen writing into her patterns," which brings me to some of the pictures Elizabeth and I are looking at. And if you're watching on YouTube, you could see them too. Up close, these costumes are incredible.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with them.
Oh, they're so good. And they just get like progressively more wild and intricate through the movie. And I'm like, you know what, girl, you turn yourself into a fanatic. Like,
yeah, you go, girl.
Like, I hate what you're doing, but like when it comes to your outfits, like, go for it.
Yeah, I would have loved a scene where I got to see Lady Jessica get the face tats, honestly. Like, I wonder when that decision was made. But Lady Jessica's final look when she's watching the fight between Paul and Feyd-Rautha, which we'll get to later, so cool. When she has the chains coming from the top, the hood that goes over it. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
With that, we've had too much, enjoyment in Arrakis. We got to go somewhere that's a little more cold and scary. We're talking about Gedi Prime, the homeworld of the Harkonnens, and
I did not enjoy myself.
Not a fun touristy destination. Jacqueline told the credits when it came to the Harkonnens, it's all about the goth look. They're like vampires sucking the blood from the Fremens. I use a lot of stretch leathers, stretch vinyls, and chains. The servants are dressed in these constrictive leather-coated bones that work as corsets, where we took small animal bones and coated them in vinyl and then laced them all together. Feyd-Rautha's entourage of female slaves are young, ghoulish, vampire-esque women in black stretch leather to keep them sinister. Their jewelry was made in her shop using bones and leather. I mean, I don't even have words for this.
Did you see my face when you described that corset?
Yeah, Elizabeth almost fell down. So now we know why the Harkonnens were so creepy looking.
Yeah.
Because Jacqueline West went full goth, which I appreciate, honestly.
I do too. Honestly, like I saw that look in the theater of those, I guess, interconnected bones. And I just assumed it was all plastic. And I was like, oh, that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. No, they went there.
Okay.
They definitely went there. But that leads me to my favorite scene.
This would be your favorite scene.
It is okay.
It is cool. It is cool.
The gladiator arena scene where we introduce Austin Butler's character Feyd-Rautha, I think is just a cinematic marvel. It is so cool.
Yeah. It is. I did appreciate the black and white. I was like, I don't understand why this is black and white, but it makes more sense then.
So it is black and white because the homeworld of Gedi Prime has a black sun. So with that, we have a great interview that Jazz 10K did on Variety with the cinematographer and Denis Villeneuve about this black and white scene. The idea actually came from Denis, who wanted to give Getty Prime a distinguishable look in a monochromatic world with the black sun. He said, "We can't do a gladiator scene with sand because it'll look like Arrakis. How about black and white?" But the cinematographer, Fraser, took it one step further and said, "I have a brilliant thing that I want to test and show you." So I tested the technique with another character who has no hair, and he was a perfect candidate to test it on. And Denise saw it and said, bingo. With that, Elizabeth, we were talking about this incredible use of an infrared camera, which meant all the camera could see was infrared, and that became their world.
Oh.
So this is a new fancy. It's not just a black and white filter. This is a infrared camera, which of course
That's amazing.
led to some problems for the always lovely costume designer Jacqueline West. And with Denis Villeneuve, it wasn't a case of just fixing the costumes in post and covering it up with visual effects. Jacqueline had to go back to the drawing board when it came to the scene, because when you look at it, there's a lot of costumes happening. Sure, there's some are probably visual effects, but there's a lot of costumes. And Jacqueline was looking at the camera, the infrared camera, and the costumes kept coming up as white, and everyone's wearing black. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And the cinematographer actually was like, I don't freaking know either, you know? So he ended up setting up a station outside of Jacqueline's shop where they could test a lot of these costumes. Jacqueline told the credits, "I had a rather interesting incident because that scene was all shot in infrared. I didn't realize some fabrics, when shot in infrared, would turn white. And Fade Rotha's outfit had so many different fabrics and leathers. When we camera tested, some of his pieces came out white, so I had to start over. That's a heads up for other designers," she says. "When you're shooting in infrared, test everything." Greg Fraser set up a camera outside our shop where we constructed everything and let me test every piece of fabric for anyone on this planet. And I mean, this is why I love movies, because it is so cool. And I love just pushing the envelope on incredible technology.
That's amazing. Because infrared, that's like, hold on.
Yeah, I know. That was me the other day, like looking up what the heck is infrared anyways.
Yeah, because it's basically like it's reading like the waves of light we can't see and like heat and stuff, right? Infrared? I feel like I've only seen like infrared used on ghost shows.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're getting close. It's definitely not something that we have on our iPhone. Let's just say that. So it's not you can't just like set up your iPhone and do a black and white filter like we've talked about in so many other podcasts. This is something totally new. And I love this scene because I just think, like I said earlier, I just think it's a marvel at how they got it done.
That's
and
amazing.
I can't imagine Jacqueline's face when they set up the first costume and the whole thing came out as white like a ghost. She was like, Because if it's reading heat, like that would make sense because black retains a lot of heat. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. I want a whole behind the scenes about how they made this work.
This is the first time I'm like, can we get a cinematographer on the podcast?
Right?
Honestly, like I would love to talk about this more. So stay tuned on it. We're going to have to when we have Jacqueline on, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this. Also, I want to bring up the really interesting characters we saw in the background that like really gave me like a alien feel. Jacqueline said those people clothed entirely in black, they were kind of like referenced as like Spanish bullfighters. And Denis Villeneuve and the concept artist just brought Jacqueline West a stick drawing for their idea for these aids with the sharp pointy sticks. And Jacqueline said, I like it, but can I expand on it? So she really elongated those hats. It's like a Toreador hat, but very extreme and spiky, she said. They're almost ghost-like. And yeah, I just want to honorable mention to those creepy guys in the background.
Absolutely. They scared me. I was like, oh, no, no, thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to see any more of those. Definitely like my Comic-Con inspiration, though.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Good call.
We have to talk more about Austin Butler.
Austin Butler.
I was converted. I am now a Austin Butler fan, honestly. He did it for me in this film because I was a little tired after Elvis, but he brought me back. I thought he killed it.
I gotta agree, actually, but I'm just like, dude.
This guy. And I was like, something about this feels so familiar to me, and I can't figure it out what. And then I started doing research for the slides. And when talking about Fade Rotha's ensemble, Jacqueline West told GQ that she looked to the work of H.R. Giger, the artist and designer best known for designing the xenomorph for Alien. And I'm like, oh, duh. Because we all know how I feel about Alien and Giger's work. She said, we want him to evoke a kind of gothic vampire, early dark medieval feeling, yet be the future. Because of all of his action when he fights in the arena, I wanted things that moved on him to show his almost ballet type but powerful movements that he makes, which, yeah, there is lots of movement.
Yeah. She did it. She did it.
She did the thing. Honestly, I'm like a Fade Rotha stand. I want a t-shirt. I want to be one of his like little gothic vampire ghouls.
Fade Rotha groupie.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, I really loved his like little like official getup when his uncle was sending him to Arrakis.
Oh, when he gave him that big old smooch.
Yeah.
That was a nice costume. Yeah, the detail on it too. And it was cool seeing it in color too, which was also like jarring at first. Like, oh wow.
Yeah.
There is so much detail outside of the infrared. We had another character that just showed up, and she had about 5 minutes in this movie, and she made every second of that 5 minutes count. We're talking about the lady Margot Fenring, who Elizabeth. I love this character.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know who she is, but I want more of her.
This was perfect. This is exactly what happens in the book. She shows up, gets pregnant, and gets out.
Yeah. Goals.
She's like, okay, I'm done here. Bye.
She did what had to be done and looked incredible. Jacqueline talked about her costume being very much inspired by the Paris runways I talked about at the beginning of this episode. As she explained to GQ, is made from a lot of very, very expensive French taffeta that could rise above her head without wiring. The main inspiration, however, she said, was 1940s Balenciaga. So,
get it?
I mean, she's using Balenciaga in a futuristic Dune film. Brilliant.
I love it. I love it. Like this little scene here, like with how the hood was around her, I was like, this is giving me Arwen vibes. I love it. This is perfect.
Also, I love that, like, it's very blue, too. Like, I think of Harkonnens, I think of, like, just black and white. And the blue was, like, kind of sinister, honestly.
And it was, like, what I loved about it, it wasn't, like, a really dark, almost black, like, midnight blue. It was blue.
Yeah,
like, it is a royal blue.
Yeah.
And it... fantastic.
Yeah, she took those scenes, she ate that, honestly. Like, she did what had to be done. Oscar. If there was an Oscar for like best 5 minutes in a film,
she'd win.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Rivaled only by Anya Taylor-Joy, who had a solid 15 seconds in this film.
I was so confused when she showed up to this premiere because I was like, what?
I thought the same too. I was like, when did I miss that?
Yeah, I was so confused. And then literally 15 seconds. And so like in the book, her character is like fully like a toddler. Like, and like, because I literally think she's only like 3 or 4. But like all the creepiness that baby was giving us in the movie, this small child also exudes in the book. And it was so perfect. And then she shows up in Paul's dream to be like, yo, bro. And I was like, this is... I don't know why this is perfect, but it is.
Well, she somehow... Like, if you put together Lady Jessica, Duke Leto, Paul Atreides, she somehow has a family resemblance. I can't pinpoint it. But it also is just perfect. And they're setting it up for her to be in the next film, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
she'll do incredible in it. And this is how you do a cameo. Don't tell anyone about it. Just show up to the premiere in like a big ol' interesting look and just get your 10 seconds in. It was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Another nominee for best 15 seconds in the film.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting near the end here, but we can't end without talking about the evolution of Timothée Chalamet's character, Paul Atreides. Elizabeth, thoughts?
I love this look. It gives me Darth Vader vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
That like black cape over his still suit. I'm like, yes, you are this prophesied hero, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. Probably shouldn't be, but you know, you're going for it.
I think people need to really talk about how actually incredible Timothée Chalamet is as an actor, because he really killed it in this film, because his performance really sold his character. And I think Jacqueline West actually agrees, because when she was talking about his costumes for the second film, she really talked about how she didn't really do that much. And Timothy really did a lot of heavy lifting with his performance. She told the credits, he wears a still suit the whole time. The only things I changed were his wrappings and his hoods. When he takes on the role as their leader, he becomes like the T.E. Lawrence of the Fremens, leading them in revolt against their usurpers. I gave him hoods that were almost medieval, but Timothy grew as a man and as an actor in those 3 years between the films, and it shows his maturity.
Yeah.
I'd love to say that I did that with his wardrobe. That was costume magic. But I think on this one, I have to hand the praise to Timothy. It was all his acting.
Aww.
He takes on that cloak of power and how he acts and manages his relationship with the Fremens and Cheney.
That
so
was cute.
basically, Jacqueline was like, yeah, he ate that, you know?
He really does. He really does. And yeah, like, I don't know. I think he has like a PJ look with Cheney at one point. But yeah, other than that, he's just in his still suit. Like, just out here being like, what do I gotta do to get revenge?
Right. But you are right in the sense that he wears the still suit. He puts on, you know, some extra layers, some wrappings, and that hood. And just the way he like tilts his face and gives that look, it becomes Darth Vader. Just like that.
Yeah.
It's really cool, especially with that shot with the worm jumping behind him. Chef's kiss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I loved it.
But she did mention, though, that there was some new armor when it came to the worm riding sequences. Jacqueline told the credits, that's not CGI. We shot a lot of close-ups in Budapest on an enormous animatronic life-size worm on a gimbal with the most enormous wind machines blasting sand at them. So the armor had to be able to travel through the desert. And I did go on to read how they created this reinforced armor that was basically getting sandblasted with actors wearing it at the same time.
What?
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Where are the behind the scenes on this movie? I would love to see that.
I need to invest in a Blu-ray player, and when this comes out on Blu-ray, put all the behind the scenes. I will watch them. I will watch them.
That Max needs to give Jacqueline West a, let's say, 60-minute documentary about the costumes of Dune, honestly.
Let's give her 2 hours.
That's fine. Yeah, I was trying to compromise, but 2 hours or 3 hours, however long Oppenheimer was, about that amount.
Yeah, maybe a little more.
Speaking of the sandworms, I have a picture here. I just want to shout out the cinematographer again, Greg Fraser, who also did the Batman, Star Wars Rogue One, Zero Dark 30. Just the shots in this film were incredible. We're looking at a picture of the sandworms jumping out at the same time and having a little
snack,
a little Sardaukar snack. That's an incredible scene, leading us to basically our final scene, which is the confrontation between Paul and Feyd-Rautha. And I just gotta say, it was also an incredible scene. Very stressful. But like, I was also familiar with this scene just from looking back at, you know, the previous Dune film that came out in the 80s where Sting played Feyd-Rautha. I just like, I was like familiar with this setup of them just with the knives looking at each other. And I just thought it was such a great finale to the movie. It was an incredible performance.
Absolutely. It was so great, especially when Paul's like, yo, I'm related to you. And he's like, huh, okay, let's murder each other now.
Yeah, that's cool. I did not see that coming, gotta say. This is why I waited to read a book until after I finished the second movie, because that was crazy.
Yeah.
With that, Elizabeth, that is the end of Dune Part 2 of a few years in the making at the podcast.
A few years in the making for Dune Messiah as well.
Such a great movie. Honestly, I'm such a fan. It's definitely one of my favorite movies I've seen in a while, just because I think it's just like such a modern Marvel to me. I always hear people talk about how there's like nothing good at the theaters nowadays, so they don't want to go to the movies. But I'm like, you just got to go and see movie, even if you feel like Dune isn't for you. I think it's worth it just to see like these sets, the costumes, the work of all these incredible artisans.
Absolutely. It's absolutely worth going to the movies. I think the main problem behind people going to the movies is it's so freaking expensive.
Yeah. That too.
But for something like Dune, it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
Like we don't get Dune movies all that often.
You don't. A final like standing ovation for Jacqueline West, honestly.
Yes.
We talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but I think it's time for the Jacqueline West Oscar after this.
Yes.
I'm just going to go out and say that.
I hope so. She's done so much good work. She deserves it.
She has. And this one, I just feel like was just, it was something else. Let's take a little break, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
When we come back, we still got to play our favorite game.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Dan, audio engineer of the podcast, here to let you know that if you wanted to support the show, you can head over to theartofcostume.com/podstore. There you can buy some awesome TeePublic merch with the podcast logo, such as a shirt, coffee mug, stickers, and of course, a baby onesie. Thanks for all your support.
For our favorite game.
I am. I've been thinking about this for a little bit now, and I think I'm ready. Hit it, Daniel.
The one costume to rule them all.
Spencer, what's your one costume to rule them all?
I am very excited about this one, because to me, it's actually kind of easy. I just got to give it to Fade Rotha's gladiator look, because using that infrared technology to me was just groundbreaking, innovative. And I just feel like this is one of those rare moments on a podcast where we're talking about something that changed, that was like a movement in costume design. We talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula, and we talked about Crimson Peak, and we talked about Clueless. I think Dune Part 2 should be added to that conversation, and this costume has that moment, I guess.
I agree. She really, I feel like we're in a time where there's so much technology being developed and used constantly that a lot of times I think we overlook the work costume designers have to do to make sure their craft shows up the best that it can with those new technologies being used. And I think this is a beautiful example of not just her talent as a costume designer, but cross-department cooperation and teamwork, really. That just, it makes her work look gorgeous and beautiful and brilliant, and his as well.
Yeah, the level of professionalism and expertise that is necessary of costume designers, which leads me to the conversation we've been having a lot. Pay equity for costume designers. Jacqueline West as a costume designer and any other costume designer should be paid at the level of everyone else who works on this film that worked in creating these scenes, the production designer, the cinematographer, so on and so forth. They're just as much an equal part of this process as every other department.
Put in so much work, are so integral to the process. They deserve it.
Right. Elizabeth, what was your one costume rule them all?
My one costume to rule them all is Paul Atreides' Darth. I'm just going to call it his Darth Vader look.
Yeah, I love this.
Because it just really shows who he has developed into as a character, which is this like underground rebel leader.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Paul cares about the Fremen. Paul does, in a way, care about justice being done.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also out here for his own interests. Like, if his father had never died, if they just, like, took over Arrakis, like, he would not have the same level of care about this cause as he does because his family was murdered. So, like, he's like, yes, I'm here to lead the Fremen, to help them take their planet back, but I'm also here mostly for revenge.
Yeah. Look, he's looking for some payback.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a great costume, and I love the fact that you called it his Darth Vader costume, because I feel like it made something click in my head, because I was like, what does this look like when he's walking? And I'm pretty sure there's like an exact moment in Star Wars Rogue One where we see Vader come down that hallway, and it's very much like the same silhouette where you see like this cloak kind of blowing in the wind a little bit, looking badass, and you know that you don't want to mess with this guy. Darth Vader had a lightsaber. Paul Atreides had a sandworm jump up in the background.
Yep.
It's brilliant.
It is. Absolutely.
It says so much about his character with just so little. It's just like the colors of his wraps and a hood. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. Oh, Elizabeth, what an episode. And we're not the only ones that have someone costume to rule them all. We have a few people that sent theirs in ahead of time, which I very much appreciate. These all came in on Instagram this time around. Our first one is from Daniel Glowacki on Instagram. Their favorite costume, their one costume rule them all, was the Princess Irulan with the veil. Then we have Raven Rhinestone. They also mentioned Princess Irulan's final outfit, but they also want to give a shout out to Jessica's Arrakis dress.
Yeah. And
then Robert J.C. Pugh, who we've read about on the podcast as well, mentioned Florence Pugh's metal headpiece outfit.
Yeah.
I'm getting a feeling that most people's one costume to rule them all was worn by Florence Pugh this time around.
I think so. I think that's a good indicator.
Yeah, I like it. I gotta say honorable mention though to Lady Jessica. I'm kind of shocked that no one mentioned her costumes.
Yeah. I'm gonna say I was real close to picking, her coastal grandmother look for the one costume to rule them all.
Yeah.
But then when I was flipping through the slides and I remembered that Paul look, I was like, ooh, no, this is it. Yeah,
that's a good one. Elizabeth, that's it. That's the end of our Dune episode.
It was a good one. It's been a long time. This was nice.
I had fun.
Me too.
But what are we going to be talking about in our next episode, Elizabeth? Because I think this might be just as fun.
Spencer, I am so excited. We are talking about one of my favorite shows ever. This week, we are talking about the Disney Plus TV extravaganza that is Loki.
Yeah.
With special guest, costume designer, Christine Wada.
Yes.
So good.
So we actually already recorded it with Christine. We'll just say that. Yeah. And we had a good time because it was
a fun episode.
I mean, we brought up Christine Wada way back when we did the first Loki and Our Flags Mean Death. And we just kind of like said she's one of our one of our VIP guests that we need to have on the podcast, and we made it happen. And let's just say it was worth the wait. It was a great conversation.
It was great. Y'all are going to love it. I'm so excited. If you need some content from us in between episodes, you can watch the podcast now. It is posted on YouTube on Wednesday. You can check it out at youtube.com/@theartofcostume. You can head to our Instagram at the Art of Costume Pod, TikTok at the Art of Costume. Hey, it's about to be summer. Get yourself an Art of Costume tank top or t-shirt at theartofcostume.com/pod store. I just ran out of energy.
I know. I was like, I can't tell if that was a period or you just died.
I died. And if you loved what you heard, please leave us a 5-star text review on Apple Podcasts. And who knows, maybe we'll read it on an episode.
Yeah, we would very much appreciate that. And if you have a one costume and rule them all from Dune Part 2, don't forget to leave us a voicemail at 626-515-1826. We could play that on the episode. Or you could just email us at theartofcostume@gmail.com. And we love to read your comments on our future episodes. Elizabeth, it has been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it this time with you. I love Dune. I love sci-fi. And I just feel like we're winning when it comes to this moment.
I agree, Spencer. This has been lovely. Can't wait for Dune Messiah. We'll pick up this conversation then.
Yeah, we're both going to be like 50 years old with gray hair. Like, Elizabeth, welcome to season 72 of the Art of Costume podcast. We're talking about Dune Messiah finally.
Can't wait. Everybody, have a fantastic week.
The Art of Costume podcast is hosted and produced by Elizabeth Joy Glass and Spencer Williams. Our audio engineering and editing is done by Dan White. Follow us on TikTok at The Art of Costume and Instagram at The Art of Costume Pod. If you want to support the show, go to theartofcostume.com/podstore. For more podcast updates, costume reviews, deep dives, and interviews, go to theartofcostume.com, a blog dedicated to highlighting the best in costume design.